if you're talking about taking it seriously, the first House of Blues gig that we did, we had this guy who was acting as our was he our agent? I mean, it was a joke.
He was our friend. He was a friend of ours who wanted to be our manager.
We're like, oh, if we're going to be serious, you should have an agent. So you got a friend that pretends to be your agent. But he mailed like 42 press packs to the House of Blues.
Welcome to the Wisconsin Music Podcast. Here to introduce you to the great musicians and music businesses and organizations of Wisconsin. Every week, Wisconsin Music Podcast will be bringing you great information on what's happening in the Wisconsin music world. For our music-loving listeners, we'll bring you music that you haven't even heard of yet from unique and talented artists and hear about their journey so far. You'll either hear live performances of their songs or songs from their selected discography. For our musicians out there wondering what they can do to further their recognition, we'll be calling upon Wisconsin music businesses and organizations to enlighten you on what they're doing to help further your music journey. And now, here's your host, Zach Fell.
Thanks, Dean. This is Zach Fell with Wisconsin Music Podcast. So glad you guys were able to tune in. This is episode 2, Phat Phunktion. Today on Wisconsin Music Podcast, we have Al Falashi and Tim Whalen. They are the founding members of Phat Phunktion, and they're going to tell us basically the whole history of Phat Phunktion from the very beginning through today. So I'll see you guys on the other side of the interview.
I'm here with Al and Tim of Phat Phunktion, a Madison-based funk band. We're going to be talking about their experiences of touring and recording and kind of about where they started out originally. So let's start with Al. Al, you grew up in Kenosha, correct?
I did, yes.
So why don't you kind of tell us a little bit of growing up in Kenosha musically? You know, did you start out middle school or high school band and the instruments you played and kind of go from there into where you got to play with Phat Phunktion?
So I was born into a pretty musical family. My father was a jazz drummer, and my two older sisters both sang and played the piano. I was kind of an oops. I came 11 years after my two sisters, who are a year apart. I don't think my parents were planning on having me. My dad was probably pretty happy that he eventually got his son instead of two daughters. So he had me sitting behind a drum kit when I was old enough to sit up and hold sticks. My parents forced me to take piano lessons when I was a kid because that's what my sisters did. At the time, I hated it, but obviously, as many people who write music nowadays knows that that's an invaluable skill. And so I am grateful that they forced me to do it at the time. But what is it, in fifth grade when the band program starts to roll around schools and they ask you what instrument you want to play, my dad took me down there fully intending me to be a drummer. And we walked in the door, and the guy who owned the music store in Kenosha was called Passetti's Music. And Emil Passetti was in the corner, and he was a really good saxophone player, and he was tearing it up in the corner. And I came in and I heard him play it, and I was like, Dad, what is that? And he was like, son, that's a saxophone, but the drums are over here. And we don't have to buy a drum set. Well, we would have to buy a saxophone. And I was like, but Dad, I want to play the saxophone. And so he begrudgingly said yes to the saxophone, probably mainly because it was a jazz-based instrument. He was a jazzer, so I'm guessing he probably wouldn't let me pick bassoon or oboe or something like that. But saxophone he was cool with, and Kenosha has an amazing music program.
Yes, they do.
In the public school system there. It is, I just happened to come through at a time where I had two of the most incredible teachers. Ken Wheely was my junior high. Yes, I'm old enough that it was junior high back then, not middle school, but Ken Wheely was my junior high teacher. Very inspirational, and a jazzer himself. And then the great Alex Sabo at Bradford. And we had a killer band. And back actually in Phat Phunktion, Courtney Larson is our trombonist. She went through those same two music programs with me. Another good friend, Jeff Mattern from Mama Digdown's Brass Band, which is probably another band you should have on the podcast. But
Yeah, definitely.
yeah, the three of us went through school at around the same time and went through the Wisconsin Honors Project, which is another great program in the state of Wisconsin. It's incredible. And then we all decided to go try out for a scholarship at Summer Music Clinic, which is essentially a glorified band camp at UW-Madison. And you try out for the Wisconsin Music for the Music Clinic Scholarship, which is they give out 10 scholarships every single year. And you have your choice of going to either UW-Madison or UW-Milwaukee. You don't have to major in music, but you have to take an ensemble every single semester, and it's a tuition waiver. It's free tuition. So Courtney and I are the same age. We went to go try out our junior year of high school, and I moved into the dorm, and I heard a little bit of a ruckus coming from down the hall on the male floor. And not knowing anybody there, I was like, well, let's go see what's going on here. And I walked into Mr. Tim Whalen's room, and he was with a bunch of his friends. He is a year older than me, so he had already won his scholarship and was coming back the summer in between his senior year of high school and his freshman year of college to fulfill. Once you get the scholarship, you got to come back to the camp that summer. So he knew everybody there and was having a good old time. And they were playing a game in the room and invited me in, and we became fast friends. Right around that time, they wanted us to do like a song and dance. The floor was supposed to do like a song and dance, and Tim and I looked at each other and were like, we do not want any part of this. And what was it? The Arsenio Hall show was like super popular at that time, and they had a kicking band. That band for Arsenio's Hall shows, his show was so funky. And so we asked if we could do a pit band, in between, play in between all of the shows. And they were like so excited that we took the initiative to do this extra stuff. Yeah. Literally, we were just like, we want out of the song and dance. But we formed this band. We had a blast doing it. And Tim looked at me and was like, man, if you come to Madison, if you get the scholarship and you come to Madison, we should form a band, something like Tower of Power and Earth, Wind and Fire. And I was like, absolutely, that's my jam. And that was literally the seed of Phat Phunktion.
Cool. Very cool. Awesome. You and me kind of have like the opposite. When we started out, my dad is also a drummer, and that's all I wanted to do was play drums, but he would not let me play drums. He said, I have a saxophone that I picked up years ago. Here's a saxophone. Learn how to play it. Take lessons. But yeah, so you wanted to play saxophone right away. I wanted to play drums right away. And I do play drums now, but saxophone was my learning instrument right there.
Cool.
So
yep.
Very cool.
And I still play drums. I do play drums, not as much, but I play with an organ trio in Madison, B3 Hammond organ trio led by Mike Camilleri, great B3 Hammond organ player, and Vince Jesse, who's the guitar player in Phat Phunktion. So the three of us, right. And I play drums in that group as well.
What's the name of that group?
Mike Camilleri organ trio.
Okay.
And then I also play with a great New Orleans, stride piano player named Johnny Chimes. Been playing in his little trio at a New Orleans restaurant for many, many years.
Sweet. Very sweet. And then, Tim, how did you get to be playing an instrument and getting into Phat Phunktion? I mean, we kind of heard how you guys got together, but how did you lead up to that?
Well, when I met Al, I got that scholarship as a voice student. It wasn't for instrumental. So I didn't grow up in a musical family. My family's not. I mean, my family loves music, but I'm the only musician in my family.
Okay.
I started learning how to play on a little keyboard by ear when I was in 6th grade. That's when I started plucking away at stuff, and then I just I played in bands in high school, and I always loved to play. But the scholarship thing was was a voice scholarship. But that I only lasted a year doing that. I ended up switching over to piano.
Yeah.
Once I got to school, I didn't see myself doing that. And then especially once, we started getting the band going, and that's like a whole nother avenue of things that all sorts of different things opened up.
Right.
There's one funny thing about the music clinic thing. I was so pissed that I had to actually go to that thing because right in the middle of music clinic, my girlfriend in high school at the time, her dad got me and 3 of my friends 10th row seats to go see Rush at Alpine Valley.
Oh, wow.
On the Roll of Bones tour. And I still am, but I was a huge Rush fan. And I couldn't go because I had to go. I even went to the head of the music clinic and asked if I could just leave for the night. They wouldn't even let me do that.
Really? Wow.
I mean, I got over it.
Yeah, right.
But that was that's something I'll never forget, that summer, not being able to do that.
So obviously when Neil Peart passed away, that was pretty hard hit for you.
Yeah, it was. I actually was able to do a pretty cool thing. A little off topic. I'll send you the video. I made a pretty special tribute to him here at work. I wrote an arrangement of Time Standstill.
Oh, nice.
Actually, right back there, you can see that frame.
Mm-hmm.
That's a letter from Alex Lifeson.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that was really cool. But, off topic.
Right.
So,
Tim's downplaying this a lot. They put out this video and the entire Rush community flipped out. It had hundreds of thousands of views within hours. And he was getting pinged from everybody from Getty said something to you, Alex Lifeson, eventually Neil Peart's wife. They all were in tears and choked up. It's a really cool video.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty special thing.
Yeah, definitely would love to see that.
But no, my upbringing was basically learning how to play by ear. I loved rock music. Grew up on a diet of Kiss and Van Halen and Rush and classic type bands, AC/DC. I loved the Commodores, Earth, Wind and Fire. And then in high school, that's when I really discovered Tower Power and more Earth, Wind and Fire, more James Brown. And then I really discovered jazz in high school. I was kind of into fusion in 7th and 8th grade. I really liked, the Electric Band, Chick Corea's Electric Band, right. Jeff Lorber. Then I realized Chick Corea played with Miles Davis, and then I learned about Miles, and I learned about all those people that played with Miles, and I just snowballed.
It's just amazing how it all branches out.
Yeah, and then that's when I really, really started to get really interested in. I found Bill Evans and Keith Jarrett, and I obviously knew about Chick, so I got more interested in the piano. I think the whole voice thing. I had a really great choir director at Whitefish Bay High School named Randy Swigum, who, like Al has that same story. We have these people that shaped and he was that for me. I didn't even know what a quarter note was when I got to high school. He taught me how to, he taught us all. We sight read every day before rehearsals. He taught us a lot about just how, music isn't in a vacuum. Everything we were singing or learning about or listening to, we also learned about what was happening in the world and what was happening in these composers' lives. And
right.
So all of that kind of taught me about trying to dig deeper and be more, treat it more than just like notes.
Yeah, exactly.
Which when I switched over to playing, obviously as a jazz musician and a songwriter and all that, you have to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, because notes on a page are just basically an outline, and you're supposed to interpret it in a certain way.
Right. Right.
So let's kind of talk about the beginnings of Phat Phunktion when you guys actually got really serious about it and then started touring and getting gigs. So why don't you kind of start about the beginnings of Phat Phunktion and when it got you guys to Japan and other countries and then places throughout the United States. So whoever wants to talk about that, go ahead.
Tim's the band resident historian. He is like,
Well, I think Al can jump in, but there was a series of false starts at the beginning. So we kind of started as music students that were looking for an outlet. We wanted to play. Obviously, Al and I remembered our connection, so we were the impetus for it. But we found people that kind of wanted to do the same thing, and for the beginning of it was pretty much all music students. And we were really into Maceo Parker and kind of the JBs, and so it was a lot of instrumental type stuff. And we'd rehearse in the big rehearsal room at the School of Music on Tuesday nights. Just more than anything, I think we were just kind of learning how to play that way. And we were also discovering a whole new just social dynamic. Because, a funny thing is on Tuesday nights, way down the hall, Mama Dig Downs would be rehearsing.
Okay.
Because they only started a year before we did. They started in 95. We started in right around 96. Well, when we actually started.
Your first album came out that year too, right?
Yeah, so we started kind of off and on in 95, but it didn't really start really happening until like early 96. So we ended up we were already friends with those guys, but we ended up becoming really good friends because every Tuesday night we'd know that we'd rehearse and then we'd go get wings.
There you go.
So that was a whole nother dynamic that was cool for us because it's just a different scene when you start playing in a band.
Yep.
I think we'd also been in very structured, school-based ensembles, and this one there was no rules. There was no you rehearse at this time and you get a grade at the end of it. This was like I didn't grow up playing in garage bands or anything like that. So this was, they came around with there was a Battle of the Bands poster at the Memorial Union in Madison, and Tim and I saw it and we're like, hey, we should try and get in this Battle of the Bands. Maybe this will be the jump start for whatever the band becomes. Right. And snuck in late night, recorded the demo, submitted the tape. And they were like, well, what's the name of the band? And we talked about it that night, but we never really finalized what the name was. And I remember somebody saying Phat and somebody saying Function. And then
we had kind of said it, but it wasn't decided.
No. And I walked out, and the woman, she was like, hey, you didn't put your band name on the application. I was like, all right, well, Phat Phunktion, and I just spelled it differently. And we took second in that competition. But then right around that time was, when you like, we had too much fun doing this to let it go and for it to just be this one thing. And luckily around that time, there was this really cool restaurant bar around the corner called the Mango Grill. And I mean, she was paying bands with all you could eat meatloaf sandwiches and all you could drink beer. The meatloaf sandwiches were damn good.
Oh yeah.
And so we kept coming back, and Mama's was just starting to take off. And they asked us to open up for them at the Angelic Brewing Company. And so we did that. And then that was I think that was the kind of jump start that got us thinking that, hey, this is a thing. This isn't like a recital that somebody put on because of a class. We're like in a band now. This is outside of school. It has absolutely nothing to do with school.
Right. So like fall of 96, we were still kind of like, we were figuring out our lineup still. We played a couple shows at the Club Tavern. We opened for Mama Dig Downs at the old East End.
Okay.
And then what Al is talking about, it was a pretty important moment for us. The Angelic Brewing Company was a definite like college like spot. And they had live music. And it was in February of 97. It was for like a fireman's benefit. We played a show with Mama Dig Downs at this thing. And it ended up being a place where we played once a month until the early 2000s.
Right.
So we really built our following there.
Yeah, that college-based following, that was the spot.
Yeah, the Angelic, I'll never forget, we played New Year's Eve. We did our CD release party there in October of 97. We did a New Year's Eve show there, 97 into 98. And do you remember this? They had to come in the next day with like snow shovels to clean up the mess.
I think they scraped it off the ceiling.
Yeah, that was the scene. There was a lot of good times there. We were playing a lot of.
Here We Go. Was that the first one?
No, the first one was self-titled.
Oh, was it self-titled? Okay.
I don't think you can get it anymore.
Okay. So was Here We Go? Was that the second one?
Second.
Okay.
There's an album called Soul Juice. The band has basically two periods, and we could talk about this, but up until Tim left for grad school in 2003, and then when he came back from grad school from 2005 on. And there was some personnel changes right at that point, and due to like copyrights and writers' credits and stuff like that, when we went back out on tour, we never reprinted that first album. What we did was we took songs off of Here We Go and that first album that were written by Tim and I, and we made a new album that's like the same music, but it's called Soul Juice.
Okay, so let's take a listen off of that Soul Juice album. Here is Shake by Phat Phunktion.
You
So, I mean, yeah, the first album, we listen to it now and it's kind of comical because none of us had really ever been. Had you been in a recording studio before that, Tim?
I mean, yeah, but not to make I mean, just for bullshit. Like this was I'll never forget the first time we went into the studio. Like the first thing that we were asked, like, do you want to use a click? And we're like, no way, you know. And then then we ended up using a click, and we was like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. But you know, there was like the only overdubs that were done on the record were our vocals and some solos. Everything else was just us knocking stuff out, and the horns overdubbed as well. But
because we had no money, right? So you're like, no, and I gotta get in here, I gotta get it done. Come on, one take. Why are you making mistakes? Come on, this is costing us money. So I mean,
so we didn't know anything about production or
right. Was that done to tape or was it ADAT at that time?
We couldn't afford tape, as analog tape's expensive.
Yes, it is. And it's like 20 years ago, it was like $150 a reel. And now it's like over $300 a reel, so it's just like crazy. I got rid of my 2-inch machine like 2 or 3 years ago. So I had a 16-track 2-inch for a long time in my recording studio. What did you guys learn during that first true album?
I know for me, it was the first time I listened back to myself. I mean, obviously, you know, when you go into a recording studio, you got nice mics. You're trying to get some separation. So when you hear the playback of just your track muted, it was kind of a really scary moment where you get a chance to like really dissect your playing. And I'd never done that before. Everything that I had done had been live in the room. If I heard any recordings, it was like my dad holding a crappy mic, you know, plugged into a cassette player at a gig sitting in the back of a theater. Like, what is that? Right. No, but to hear yourself crystal clear. I think that for me is when two lights went on. One was how to record yourself and break down your own sound and be like, this isn't not what I want to sound like. This is not how I want to perform on tape. And it opens up that door to like really self-analyze your own sound. And then the second light that went off was all of this cool stuff that I'm hearing Earth, Wind and Fire do, or Maceo Parker or Tower of Power, or any of the stuff that was on pop radio sounds way better than what I'm recording right now. Obviously, maybe some of that has to do with you know, my playing, which I'm a young player. I'm hopefully going to get better, but it opened up this light of production and this whole new world of, you know, mic placements, techniques, overdubs. You know, like I didn't know what an overdub was the first time we went into the studio. I had never thought about music in that way. And we made our first album, you know, on tape, on an ADAT tape in a studio down in a basement. And then in between our first and second album is when I started getting into, you know, what can I record on my own computer? And you buy your first interface that allows you to hook up a mic into a desktop computer. Desktop computers at that time were just getting fast enough to record audio. And that's when my, you know, brain for production and all of that stuff just kind of exploded.
Cool. Very cool.
That first album, that was my big thing how it changed my life. I'm sure Tim's got some of the same stuff and maybe some different stuff.
Yeah, I think a lot of what Al hit on. You know, the thing about that first record, I mean, I'll always, you know, it's our first album, so I'll always have a bit of a nostalgia for it because I remember the time more than anything else. And also for all of the, you know, what it was lacking, you know, what it wasn't lacking was certainly like spirit and, you know, a lot of what we still do now was kind of planted, you know, writing, you know, complex arrangements and, kind of adventurous song forms. And, you know, even though it was very like, rough around the edges, But the thing about that first album, it's like it sounds very narrow to me, just because there's no, there's nothing was really paid attention to in terms of placing things in the spectrum, and so the thing I really, when we did the second album, and we went overboard with it.
Overproduced? Is that what you're saying?
Well, we really realized, like, we can
double everything.
We can double guitars. We can double guitars. We can thicken the vocals up. So if you listen to those, the difference between those first two albums is very different.
Yeah.
But that also was the next. We learned how to layer vocals. We learned how to double vocals. We learned how we could create vocal pads by doubling stuff. We learned how to thicken the guitars, and we paid a lot more attention to getting better sound.
Yeah.
Playing better takes. We did everything individually. We learned about the fact that we don't all have to play together.
Not that we were rich, but we also had, by that time, we had established the band, and it was gigging regularly, so we had an income. So studio time was, there was more time.
We spent a lot of time there.
Yeah.
Was it the same place as your first album compared to your second album?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Where'd you guys record at?
Sleepless Nights. Yeah, which is now called Megatone.
And who was the engineer for that?
Well, it was a bunch of different engineers. And a lot of those guys are still good friends of ours. Because we learned a lot from them, and I think they learned stuff from us, too, actually.
Yeah.
The father figure of that studio is a guy named John Mocknick, who is now out of the business, but he was a great guy, great studio owner, a great teacher, not in the sense that he had lessons or anything like that, but those guys, he taught those guys a lot. And there's basically a tree of guys that have now gone on and started some of the most successful studios in Madison. And they came from the John Mocknick tree. Jake Johnson owns Paradigm. Paul Schluter owns Megatone, which is in the old building. And then as we progress and talk more about Phat Phunktion, we've moved to we use a studio called DNA, which is Mark Whitcomb, who is all of those guys worked on the first Phat Phunktion album at different times, because we were just taking whatever time was available late at night for as cheap as possible. We'd book that engineer.
Well, and what Mocknick would do was Mocknick always recorded the drums. He was the drum guy. It was either Ralph, who I don't know what happened to him, or Whit recorded all the bass, because Mark Whitcomb's a bass player. Jake recorded all the vocals mostly and all the keyboards. And Schluter did all the guitars. So they were really excited that we got really into this, like wanting to actually like produce more, because then they got into it too.
Right.
Paul actually, I don't know if you've ever heard of the band Last Crack.
No.
Okay. But Paul, Paul's actually pretty well known just outside of Madison, I think, because he's been in some hard rock bands that have actually been... They
were signed. Yeah.
Last Crack did a major European tour in the early 90s.
Okay.
And then it just kind of fell apart, but that would be a very interesting guy, actually. Paul would be an interesting guy to talk to. Yeah. But yeah, so I think we're both kind of saying the same thing. We just learn more about, like, the guitar could go over here and the keyboard could go over there. It doesn't all have kind of be, it's not just like, it's not whatever. Basically, the first album kind of sounds like whatever.
Right. I gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, here we go. Definitely that time period in terms of us playing out, especially in Madison and in parts of Wisconsin, we definitely, like, our popularity had elevated by that point. I mean, we were a one sold out night at the Angelic, and then the next night we'd play a sold out night at another big club called the Regent Street Retreat. Like, so it was like, in Madison's not a very big town, so like we were doing this every month.
Yeah.
So like it was kind of things were rolling. So from like 99 to, I don't know, basically till when I moved to New York, I don't think we ever had a show that wasn't packed. I mean, Al, I'm seeming to remember when we started playing at Luther's Blues, which was a really big place. We all it was just kind of like a thing at that point. It just, our shows were pretty much always successful.
In Madison, we had definitely established ourselves, and then it was something that we all started taking more seriously. In fact, we had our two trumpet players on the first album were also in Mama Digdown's brass band, and we kind of came to this point where Mama was playing every weekend, and we wanted to start playing every weekend. And it wasn't a bad thing, but we kind of had to go to those two trumpet players and be like, hey, you got to pick one or the other, knowing full well that they were going to probably pick Mama's because Mama's was gigging all the time. But it was just something that we had to do. Otherwise, we were never going to be able to play because both of our trumpet players were not available.
Gotcha.
So it was a tough call for us. But we had to kind of, have that discussion one day. And of course they went with Mama's because Mama's was playing all the time. Yeah. But what it did do is it also connected us with John Schipper, who has been with us since, 1999. He just wasn't on the very first album. That was the only thing that he didn't do. But an incredible lead trumpet player. And he also was with us at that summer music clinic. So he actually dates back to when the seed was planted for Summer Music Clinic, and we had a slightly different horn lineup for the first portion of the band. This is before Tim left for New York. Than we do since Tim came back. We slimmed it down, a little bit, but. The horn section, the core of the horn section has been John Schipper on lead trumpet, myself, and Courtney Larson on trombone.
Yeah, and I think we also, what you were asking, we were booking our own gigs. It would be I would book a gig, Al would book something. Our old bass player Rob, he did a lot of booking. Like Rob was actually the guy that got us into the House of Blues for the first time.
Oh, okay.
Wasn't that was Lee Feynman? That was Lee Feynman.
But Rob made the contact initially.
Found the name, but then he gave it to Lee.
Yeah.
He just annoyed the living crap
that's
out
right.
of him
Lee
until he gave
Feynman.
us
Yeah, that's right. Lee. Yeah, and we just kind of did things that way. Again, we were still starting to take it seriously, and then we got a booking agent.
Well, if
Phil Simon.
If you're talking about taking it seriously, that first House of Blues gig that we did. We had this guy who was acting as our was he our agent? I mean,
he was our friend. He was a friend of ours who wanted to be our manager.
If we're going to be serious, you should have an agent. So you got a friend that pretends to be your agent. But he mailed like 42 press packs to the House of Blues. And finally, I think it was the day before the gig, whatever band was going to open for Maceo Parker bailed. And we got the call, and it was last minute. Like, do you guys want to open for Maceo Parker at the House of Blues in Chicago? The gig is tomorrow. And so we went down there, and we opened up for Maceo, and our set was whatever. And then they gave us seats in the opera box on the side of the stage to watch Maceo's show. And we sat there and went to school for 3 hours. That was the night that the band changed. That was
for sure.
The night that Phat Phunktion changed. Seeing that man destroy the place for 3 hours.
Yeah.
Wow.
And we also got to see just like where we could arrive at some point.
Yeah.
That whole wow, that'd be cool if we could roll into a House of Blues in Chicago and all those people would come, and it's like all sorts of things you're learning about.
And we did well. We like I talk about it being this life-changing event. We did well. Like the band killed it. They invited us back. What was it? Month later to open up for Tower of Power, which was these guys were our idols. So it's not like we stunk. And then
about a few months after that, we opened for War. So we were there like 3 times.
But it was that Maceo gig, man, where we got in the van and we're sitting, just started writing down stuff like, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, we're gonna wear suits, and we're gonna look good, like.
We learned a lot from that show.
And that's great. I mean, those are the experiences that you would need to help elevate, because otherwise you don't know where you need to go if you don't see it.
Yeah, and then at that point too, we started definitely realizing. I think that you know how this is. You're into your thing and you're popular, but then you also. Another very important show that we did that also had a huge impact on our development was we opened for a band in Minneapolis called Greasy Meal, who was essentially most of Prince's ex-musicians. Or musicians that were still affiliated with him loosely or involved with him, and then a couple other musicians, but that was another like, whoa, like now we need to up this, So then we realized like, okay, now we checked out their records. We really like their records, really well produced albums. So then we started learning more about like production and singing better and songwriting, better lyrics, better everything. We started really focusing more on writing lyrics that weren't an afterthought.
Okay.
Because it was very much write the music and then we got to come up with some lyrics. Now it was a little more like, okay, now we got to think about this a little more. And so that those experiences with Greasy Meal and the House of Blues stuff, when we went to do our 3rd album, we really like. I think we learned lessons and we applied them.
Right.
Every album's a learning experience. It's a snapshot.
And the 3rd album was what was the title of that one?
It's originally called Higher, but then that's the album that got us to Japan.
Okay.
And it got re-released through Ben and Leo Sidran's label called, was it Nardis? It was Nardis. And it was that then we changed the album title to You and Me.
Okay.
But that album, I'll never forget. Leo Sidran is one of my best friends. He's one of Al's really good friends. His father Ben is a legendary musician and a producer, and they live in Madison. They lived in Madison. Ben still does, and I'll never forget Al. You remember we were so happy with that first album, and we went to their house and we were in Ben's music room. And the thing is, Ben listened. He was a fan of us. He really wanted us to succeed. And I'll never forget, we played him some tracks from that album, and he's like, "Yeah, this would be a good demo to get some gigs." And he was being honest.
Yeah.
And he's totally right. And then I played him the second one, and it was they same thing. There's a lot of stuff going on, But I'll never forget when I played the rough mix of Higher for Leo, because we had our Wednesday night King Club gig, and Leo and I always used to play stuff for each other. And we had just done that was the first song we mixed with John.
Okay.
And I played that for Leo, and he was like, "You guys, you basically," he's like, you found your voice, basically. And Ben said the same thing. So to me, it meant a lot when I would play this for Ben, and they both, Al, they loved that 3rd record. They kind of helped us get it out to let maybe some people hear it that wouldn't have heard it otherwise.
Right.
Yeah.
Leo got in a car accident listening to Rockstar.
What was that?
Leo got in a car accident listening to Rockstar.
Oh man.
You know,
He was listening to it, and he sideswiped a light pole.
Oh.
you have all these backstories that I don't have. So, like I said, you're the historian.
And the third album, it's just like Here We Go is too much like of the overdubs and all that.
Yeah.
The third album, obviously, because of the time, Al, right? Two Against Nature came out around that time, and we wanted the album to be perfect. Al, remember when we sat in the studio that one night and we ended up editing all of the kicks and bass? We literally lined up every single kick and every single bass note.
Wow.
But then once we did it and we listened to the other tracks that didn't do it, we were like, oh shit. We have to do this for everything. We edited the entire album.
Wow.
And of course, it's too perfect. But at the time, that's what people were doing. So it's very clean sounding, very kind of pristine sounding.
Right.
And that was another learning experience. Like, well, maybe we don't have to go that far with that,
Right.
But that's the beauty of making records.
Everyone's a different learning experience for sure. Let's take a listen to the title track. So here is Phat Phunktion with the song Here We Go.
Check this out.
Function laying on the fat tracks that hit you in your soul. You've all been told time and time again. We're laying it on the line with the funky rhyme and the fat stack of horn chicken here for mine. Thank God for the 1-4. Get you on the dance floor, kicking the funky hip hop. Man, we in the sweatbox all up in your nation. Take your place in line and find you listening to the one of a kind. Here we go. Down the highway, snacks in the backseat, waiting for the call from the big G. He tell me that he give me $5 just to make you all holler and slam till you can't breathe. We aim at the crowd with the big sound, and it weighs at least 5,000 pounds of funk. Closing out the show with the slam dunk, and the bartenders making sure you go home drunk. Up your last call, everybody on the dance floor. It's your last chance to hit it with the hardcore. Maceo, won't you blow your horn? He's smoking the people from dusk to dawn. Yeah, sneaking in the back door, begging us for one more. Working hard to give them what they paid for. Never fear, the function's here. Kicking into high gear, dropping you the bomb of the year. Here we go. Horn chicken here for miles. Thank God for the 1-4. Get you on the dance floor. Kicking the fucking hip hop. Man, we in the sweatbox all up in your nation. Take your place in line and find you listening to the one of a kind. Here we go.
So you guys are making a new album right now?
Well, there's one more album after that one.
Okay.
Well, there's technically two, but one is a live album.
Talk about a little bit of history on that one.
So Tim, after we came out with You and Me, Tim went to grad school at Manhattan School of Music. Right before he went, Ben and Leo Sidran had approached us about licensing You and Me and putting it out on this record label. And at that time, we were like having internal band discussions like, is this the end of the band? Should we shut it down? Should we replace Tim and keep going? My friendship and my working relationship with Tim was too strong to ever like have somebody else come in. So I let everybody else in the band know that I wasn't really interested in continuing if Tim wasn't going to do it.
Right.
Ben and Leo approached us about licensing this album. We were basically like, sure, why not? We're not doing anything with it. Go ahead.
Okay.
Kind of slung together a quick contract for them to license and produce the album. And Tim runs off to New York to get his master's. And while he's there, this record company that had licensed 6 albums of Ben and Leo's, they basically stole a bunch of money. So none of us ever got paid, but the side benefit was they started shipping the album to Japan. Somehow, back when there was record stores, the Tower Records in Japan,
yeah,
whoever was managing the floor, the popular music floor, came across our album and fell in love with it, and then put it in the demo bins on the end of the aisle. This is the story that we've been told anyways. They put it in the demo bin at the end of the aisle. I don't know if you remember music stores when you would go put the headphones on and there was like 6 tracks that you can listen to.
Yeah.
So they put Phat Phunktion in this demo bin, and apparently that was enough to make this thing start selling like hotcakes. Again, we saw none of that money because it was associated with this record label that never paid anybody. But it got the attention of some Japanese record execs, and so we were contacted by a record label in Japan about licensing the album directly instead of them selling it as an import. And they ended up wanting to bring us to Japan. And so this was all happening while Tim was, just finishing up his grad school. And Tim and I talked and we're like, well, listen, man, we're not getting any younger. And all those years when we were trying to be on the road we were trying to get to this point, right, it'd be foolish to like let this opportunity go by. So we kind of posed the question to the rest of the band, like, how do you guys feel not being 18, but quitting all your jobs and hopping in a van and going around the country playing gigs? And most of the band said yes. There was a couple guys that couldn't do it. And so we decided to try and replace them. And Tim got done, graduated with his master's, came back to Madison, and we hopped in the van and started touring around the country. And we did that for a year and a half, and it culminated with a trip to Japan, which was obviously just amazing for us. It's funny. I had friends that would never wanted to pay the cover to come see the band in Madison, and they'd sneak in through the kitchen. And there's people paying $90 to come see us in Japan, and I was like,
wow.
Yeah, it was surreal.
Since we are talking about the album You and Me, let's play the final track off of it. So here is Phat Phunktion with Stand Up.
Find the new excitement. Spread love in the sky for all to see. We learn to live with one another, together in peace and harmony. Oh, my friends. Yesterday I heard some homie talking jive about a so-called message coming down from the sky so high above the streets where you and me decide how it's gonna be played. 11 guys aside. Now I need you and you need me. Together we can shake everything till 2:45. We'll make the world a better place to live and learn. Now I'll be courteous and let y'all have the first turn. Step aside as the horns start to break down.
Wow, nice job, guys. So let's talk about Japan. Kind of give the listeners a little insight of playing in Japan. Like, what new things were you experiencing when you were playing in Japan?
Well, for us, I mean, in terms of our performance, it was nothing different, really. But it was everything else that was different. It was, showing up at the airport to a guy with a white placard that says Phat Phunktion, like a limo driver. Like, that was like the first thing of like, okay, this is a little different. It was staying in really nice hotels, getting a per diem, getting an email asking us what equipment we'd like. And then showing up at the gig and all the equipment we wanted was there and it was set up.
Nice.
Like 30 people running around the venue, like tending to what the band needs. I mean, you go play a gig in like Flagstaff, Arizona on a Tuesday night, you're dog shit. Like, it's not how it is in Japan.
No.
In fact, when we got back from Japan and did have some of those dog shit gigs, the slogan was just like Japan. But no, but the biggest thing though, besides all that, it was, and this is how it did change our performances. It was the utter, just attention the audience gave us.
Yeah. In what way?
Well, singing lyrics to our songs, just like, it really hit us like, wow, these people are really happy that we're here. This isn't just like a showing up at a club and you're trying to win an audience over. Like,
right.
When we played our first gig, and we were at the Cotton Club, and I remember leaving the hotel. We did sound check, went to the hotel. And I remember getting to the venue, and I was just like, I wonder how many people are going to be here. Like, because, when you travel around and you tour and you do this stuff, like, you get very used to the, like, whack-a-mole, like, you come into the venue for the gig, and you're opening that door, and what you see could either be super, like, awesome, or it could be like 4 people are there.
Right.
And then you're like, oh my God, now we got to work. Like, we really got to work now,
Yeah.
So I'll never forget opening that door, and it was just like packed. and that all the gigs were like that. And it was like, wow.
I think some of it is too.
These people are genuinely.
So
they're genuine. They were genuinely happy that we were there.
When we played in Madison, obviously Madison was our hometown. We had done the grunt work and gotten to the point where when we played a venue, it was going to be filled with people, and they were there to see us. And those were super fun. It didn't feel like work, right? And when we made the conscious decision to go on the road and tour, we'd leave Madison for 3 weeks. I think the worst one we had was 22 gigs in 21 days. Wow. We had a couple days off, and then a couple of those days were doubles. But when you leave Madison, and we knew this, right? We were going on the road to build audiences in these new cities. And some of the cities we would hit multiple times, and we would start to see the fruits of our labor. But man, when you go play this new city for the first time and the curtain opens, if there was a curtain, probably not. When you walk out on the stage, there's people in the audience like, impress me.
It's the worst.
Their arms are crossed. They're like, I paid $8 to get in here. You guys better be worth it, And so you got to, and we were fairly successful all those years that we did it. By the time the third or the fourth song would come around, the people would start clapping. I'm like, man, these boys are good, But when we were in Japan, we were in a different continent, right? Yeah. And like Tim says, man, you open up that door and it was like, whoa, this isn't going to be work tonight. This is going to be fun. Yeah. How did this happen? And how can we do this in other places? Because I think the first gig after we came back from Japan was at that pizza joint in Omaha, Nebraska. And we're like 20 minutes into the gig. And I looked over at Tim and I'm like, what are we doing wrong in this country?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And kind of to piggyback on that, what do you think we are doing wrong in this country compared to like your experience in Japan? What do you think needs to happen to get live original music more attention from bands that aren't, on the limelight?
Well, even nowadays, it's even different now just because, I don't know. I just looking at Madison. I don't live there anymore, but I know Al can back me up because we talked about this. We used to do shows like at the Angelic, let's say, or the Regent Street Retreat or wherever, and there would be a line, like not halfway down the block, like a full city block, okay. There would be a line. And that would happen. There were other bands. It wasn't just us. There were other bands that gained followings, maybe not quite that much, but big followings. I don't think there's a band in Madison that could do that now. Is there?
I don't know. I just think the music industry, the type of music is different. Like when we went through bands, throwing up the air quotes, right? Bands were popular. Dave Matthews Band, they're like the jam band thing was a scene, and we weren't too far off of what stuff was on the radio. Hip hop, like the crossover hip hop with real instruments, the roots, that was all happening at the time. So we were really close. The product that we were putting out anyways was really close to the hip stuff that was on the radio. I cruised past Z104, which is like the popular station, but that the stuff that you hear on the radio now is unreproducible by, and I'll throw it up again with the air quotes, bands. Yeah. So the popular music of the time right now is not something that you go to the High Noon Saloon.
Yeah.
To see. So I don't know. I mean, granted, I'm 45 now, so I'm not, 21 hanging out at the bars down on State Street, but I'm also connected in the music scene, and I don't know of any air quote bands that, back at that time. And it wasn't just us,
right.
It was Smoking with Superman. It was Mama Digdown, a brass band. Come on. Mama Digdown's brass band. They were consistently putting 500 people in a room. It's just not happening anymore.
I think part of it too is a lot of local music, not just in Madison. It's all been kind of conglomerated a little bit. I mean, I don't know a lot about what's going on in Madison now, but what I've been told, and that there's essentially one or two companies that run all the venues in Madison. Is there really even such thing as a? I mean, this is not even just in local venues. I mean, just. It's what happened to the radio stations.
Right.
They're like 3 companies that own all the radio stations or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's happening with music promotion. Live Nation,
Right.
Live Nation just doesn't represent U2 now and Madonna.
Yeah.
Represent like a club in Tempe, Arizona. So it's like that's going to change the landscape of how bands can grow.
Right. So basically it's the monopolization of bigger venues making the live music scene what it is now.
Yeah. And I think, Al, we talk about this a lot, and Zach, you actually mentioned it too. I would love to go back in time to when we were doing that full-time touring.
Yeah.
I would love to have had social media back then to see what might have come of it.
Yeah.
Because when we were in Japan, the only record of us being in Japan is a mini disc recording that I made and one video of the first song we played in Tokyo, and it's probably at 240 frames per second.
Yeah.
The only video record of that show. It's always wonder, like, if now imagine every person in that audience would have had a cell phone.
Yeah.
And they would have been filming it. So I always think about stuff like that. Like, it would have been interesting to see. It might not have made any difference, but Zach too, we come from the time where if we wanted to get people to our shows, we made a postcard and put it in the mail.
Yep. Absolutely.
That was a reality. Even that's when we were touring full time. The idea of an email list, that was like just starting to happen.
Right.
Which is interesting to me because you'd think live music as a whole would be further along, but it's funny, it doesn't seem to have really moved the needle all that much.
Yeah, it is interesting. And sometimes I think with everybody nowadays taking their phones out at live concerts, are you even really enjoying the experience? Or are you just filming it? And are you actually going to watch that video ever? And do you remember that concert, or do you just remember yourself filming it and seeing a crowd of people doing exactly the same thing you are?
Yeah, now there's like that venue, the Sylvie, right? So that place gets a lot of big name folks, and they get really big crowds. But a lot of those people that go to those shows, I don't think they would be caught dead going to the High Noon Saloon.
It depends. In Madison, it is changing. There is a good amount of crossover.
That's good.
So let's talk about your latest project.
There's actually a big
Little
chunk
bit
of the story though that we're kind of skipping over. I don't know if I can try and give it to you as quickly as possible. So after we came back from Japan, it was kind of an interesting time for us. We were kind of getting done with touring, being in the van. At that time, I was getting engaged to my fiance. Her name was Kate. We got engaged a week after she got engaged. She was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer. And so I realized that with my wife having to go through cancer, probably being a road musician wasn't a good choice of profession for me. So, and it seemed like everybody else in the band was kind of done with being in the van at that time. So
yeah. What year was this?
This was 2006. And so we decided to shut it down. And a lot of people went back to work. Phat Phunktion did not play a gig in between 2006 and 2009. Kate had fought with as much grace as I've ever seen anybody battle a terminal disease like that. She ended up losing her battle in 2009. One of her last wishes was to. She was a very much there's no crying in baseball kind of girl. So she didn't want anybody to be too sad. I wanted everybody to party and celebrate her life. And one of the things that she that helped drive her fight was the research, cancer research. And so she wanted to have a benefit and take all of the money and donate it to the UW Carbone Cancer Center. And so to fulfill that wish, everybody in the band and a bunch of Kate's friends came together, and we fired the band up for our first show in 3 years, which was Funk Out Cancer. It was the first year that we did it. And it kind of started this current phase that we are currently in with Phat Phunktion, with a slightly different horn section, core members of John Shipper on lead trumpet, Courtney Larson on trombone, and myself on saxophone. And then we added our longtime friend Jimmy Doherty on trumpet. And so this is the 4-piece horn section with 2 trumpets, trombone, and saxophone. We brought back our original guitar player, Vince, who was in the beginnings of the band. He didn't go on tour with us in 2005, 2006, but he came back. We added our very good friend, Nick Moran, on bass. And then, of course, the rhythm section of Tim on keys and vocals. Darvante, Turbo is his nickname, Darvante Murray, our drummer, and Paulie Ryan, our percussionist. So starting in 2009, we've been doing this kind of 1 or 2 gigs per year. Every other year we do Funk Out Cancer, and we've donated over $250,000 over the 6 events to the UW Carbone Cancer Center. When Kate passed, it was in May of 2009. Tim was teaching at the University of Toledo. He came back to Madison for that summer and lived with me in the house, and we pounded working on this new album, which we released in 2012, I think, called 2011, Real Life High Fidelity. So that came out in 2011. It got us a return trip to Japan, so we got to go back to Japan again in 2012.
I could just take a moment and point everyone to the website for Funk Out Cancer, and it is funkoutcancer.com. I will also have that in the notes. You can read about the event, which started on November 20th, 2009. This is held at the Orpheum Theater in Madison, Wisconsin. They're connected with the Carbone Cancer Center, which is at the University of Wisconsin, and they are committed to finding the best ways to detect, prevent, diagnose, and treat cancer. Donations to Funk Out Cancer will go directly to the Paul P. Carbone Cancer Center Fund, which is funding innovative research to help find the cure for cancer. For anyone that's interested in finding out more, please go to funkoutcancer.com. Once again, the website will be in the description. All right, let's get back to the interview with Al and Tim of Phat Phunktion.
This album also was around the beginnings of Spotify. So since the beginnings of the band, we've embraced new digital technologies, CD Baby, all of these digital platforms. Whenever they come out, we just sign up for them. Try to read the fine print, but we just sign up for them. We were on iTunes.
CD Baby,
on iTunes.
We were one of CD Baby's very first clients.
Yeah, and so we threw our stuff up on Spotify, and funny enough, it's at this time that the band is kind of drawing back. We're not going on the road. We're playing 1 or 2 gigs a year. One of them is a benefit, so we're not even getting paid. And somehow stuff starts taking off on Spotify. Like, we have over 12 million views. There can't be another band that doesn't tour or plays 1 or 2 gigs a year that has all the streams and 70,000 monthly listeners. It's as soon as we stopped trying is when things started to happen for the band. So,
this is what's interesting. Full circle. We opened for Maceo. We have more monthly listeners on Spotify than Maceo Parker.
Yeah. I mean, now we're playing. You start playing that game, right? But it's hilarious.
It's just interesting.
It's like as soon as we stopped trying is when things started happening. On this kind of global scale. We just found out that the late night TV show, basically the late night with Stephen Colbert of Santiago in the country of Chile, they
Okay.
use our song as their like theme song. So I just happened to type in Phat Phunktion into Wikipedia one day, and the first page that came back was all in Spanish, and I'm like, Tim, what is this? And we ran it through the translator, and I was like, what? And so we popped on YouTube and started watching these episodes, and sure enough, it's the theme song for these shows. And
Hundreds of videos of bands covering our songs on YouTube now.
Yeah.
Wow.
We got asked we were supposed to be in Australia this October to play this music festival that
We'd be leaving next week.
How did Australia hear about us? I have no
Right.
idea, right? But they asked us to come over there, but obviously because of COVID, we couldn't go.
Yeah.
They're gonna return, ask us to do it again next year, and I think the coolest honor that we got this year from all of this work that we've done in this second phase of the band was we got asked by the varsity band, the UW varsity band, to be their featured musical guest at their big show in the Cole Center. So
Yeah, I saw that.
in April, we should have been playing in an arena for 3 nights. They would have had us on a stage in front of the band and featured.
Yeah.
And so it was like this really cool honor as two, UW alumni of all the, nights we spent in the practice room, and to be kind of acknowledged for our contributions to music, at least coming out of and representing the University of Wisconsin-Madison. That was a really cool honor, and hopefully we'll get a chance to do it next year. But these are all of the things that kind of then ended up happening in that second half, which brings us to now, which I think we've embraced hopefully it turns out like, the Donald Fagen and Walter Becker Steely Dan method, which was it's a writing vessel for us to write and arrange and produce some more music, even though we're not going to hop in the van anytime soon and go travel around the country.
Yeah.
I think, exactly. And you asked about how we recorded. I think we'll still, even if we're writing like this, we've been talking about going away for a while to write together, just go, but we'll record it still, because pretty much everybody lives in Madison except for Turbo lives in Chicago. So we'll still record it if we want to record people together or get we can do all. It's not like we're all just going to be doing it remotely.
Okay.
But the thing about this is, I was telling Al, I just found an old video. I have a video. I still need to send it to you, Al. I've compiled a little video. I set up a camera, I guess. It's him and I writing horn parts for one of our tunes on our last album via phone call, and it worked just fine.
Yeah, we
I was
used,
on my Pro
we
Tools
used
rig.
the Skype at the time, the Zoom,
Yeah.
the Zoom of 2010. Yeah, but we that album that came out in 2011, there's a good number of portions of those songs that we wrote doing exactly this. 10 years ago, right? That's
Right.
10 years ago, and we were writing horn parts. Both had Pro Tools open. If I had an idea for a horn part, I'd record it, and we had a FTP. Remember, we had an FTP site, and I would upload the file for it, and a couple seconds later, it'd ping. You'd bring it back into your, we'd set like a sync point, and that's how we were transferring files back and forth.
Yeah. Then whatever we wrote, we'd finalize the part. Al, he would for trumpet parts, he'd play it on the alto and then just bring it up an octave with an effect, just because all we care about is the notes. We're not trying to. And then I would just go and I just write the horn parts out, and then I'd send them the horn parts, and then they'd just go to Al's, and then they'd record the actual horn parts.
Cool.
So it really worked out really well. It worked almost. The thing is, with the way we write, is we like writing together, and we come up with some good stuff together. But we call it like doing homework.
Right.
Like sometimes it's good to okay, I think we got something going here. Us sitting here trying to, it's probably diminishing returns. So why don't we go to our corners, and mess around with it, and then let's come back and see what we have. And you know, that's part of what you learn about when you collaborate with somebody.
Yeah.
Whereas in the early days, it was just like you would literally come in with a tune fully, like you have all the parts done. So essentially whoever wrote the tune, that was their tune. They sung on it. You know, that was kind of how it was.
Yeah.
But now it's, you know, him and I are writing everything. So it's even when we go to our corners to do our homework, you know, we're still collaborating because whatever we're doing our homework on was somebody planted that seed, you know?
Right.
So it's good. I think having a partner like that's cool.
I would say rare for a lot of people to have a friendship like that you can collaborate creatively and also just be, you know, just friends.
Well, we're friends first.
Right.
That's important.
And we've seen and done things together. we constantly talk about like stuff that has happened to us on the road. Like if I tried to explain it to you, we couldn't.
Right.
But we will be like crying until our gray-haired days about some of the stuff. Just unbelievable stuff.
Yeah.
That,
very cool.
You know, like it's kind of sad. Like probably a lot of other friendships don't get that stuff, right?
Yeah, right.
No, and Zach, you know this. We talked about it. A bond of being in a band. There's nothing like it.
Right.
I mean, in many ways, you know, I went through basic training for the Army band here.
Yeah.
You can't make that shit up. The stuff that goes on.
No.
And it's like the stories are legendary and they're all true. Like the stuff that happens, it's you can't make it up.
No, you can't make it up.
And if you're not,
for sure.
And anybody
Here's
that's
a good
in a
one. Here's a good
band,
one. Tim, we got to Japan and they gave us a translator. And so Tim wanted to say some stuff in Japanese. So he wrote down in English a couple phrases, and this translator does a great job of translating it and teaching Tim how to say it. And Tim brought this book. It was a translation book, and he tried a couple things out of the book, and it worked. And it must have given him a false sense of security on the accuracy of the translations in the book. And so first time we went to Japan, we were in Tokyo first, and that's when we had this translator. And then we went to Osaka, but the translator didn't come with us. So when we got to Osaka, Tim decides that he wants to ad-lib and go off of and go away from some of the things that this translator had written on the sheet. So he goes to the book and he says, I want to say, we'll see you next time, or we'll see you real soon. And so he looks it up and he says it. This was a wide club. It wasn't deep. It was wide. And
Okay.
And the horns are on the right-hand side, and I'm looking at the end of the gig. Tim's doing this. He's got the crowd's going crazy, and I'm looking at the opening band, which was they were really cool guys. And we were having a great conversation with them backstage. And Tim goes over to the left side and throws up his hand, and he says, whatever it was, I assume he Desai or something like that. And all the horns are looking at the opening band, and they're like, and Tim's not looking. He's looking the other way, and he gets to the middle of the room. He's like, throw your hands in the air. And
those guys started dying.
And at this point, I see these guys starting to crack up laughing.
They're like, fucking crying. They're laughing so hard.
Something's not good here. And Tim comes over to the right side. He's like, throw your hands up in the air. I assume you decide. And these guys are dying laughing. But now Tim sees them laughing, and he looks at us. I'm like, I don't know what you said, man. And the gig ends, and we go off stage, go back to the back room, and these guys are in the dressing room. They're crying, and Tim goes, "What did I say?" And they said, "What did you want to say?" And Tim goes, "I just want to say we'll see you next time, or we'll see you soon." And the guys were like, they barely keep their composure. They're like, "You basically invited the whole entire club back to your hotel room to have sex."
Awesome. Well,
yeah.
At least you didn't offend them.
Can't make that up, right?
No. Yeah, that was something.
So did they all show up?
the beautiful thing about it is obviously, they're in your corner.
Yeah.
So they knew this poor dude's he's just trying to like be one of us. And he's not making it.
Nice try, funny American.
I know. My favorite was always when you kind of do a shitty gig and not a lot of people are there. You always get like, and it's well-meaning, but you always get like the one guy that'll come up to you after, like, man, such a drag. You guys are awesome. I wish more people would be here. I got a friend who can help hook you up with like we'll get you more people here next time. There's always that one dude that's like he's got like the friend that's gonna bring more people next time.
Right.
And there's always the one person like, man, you guys are amazing. Why isn't there anybody here?
Because social media hasn't been invented yet. Yeah, this has been fun, guys. As we're getting close to the end here, with Corona going on, obviously we can't go and see live music, so playlists are a big thing now. What are you guys listening to?
I've been listening to a lot of stuff out of a lot of the guys in the camp of Lettuce, the band Lettuce. I don't know if you've heard of them. Eric Krasno's the guitar player. He's a great producer. And the singer of that group is a cat named Nigel Hall. And he came out with an album called Introducing Nigel Hall. And I'm like knee deep in it. It's so cool.
Is there a certain genre they are, or is it just a whole bunch of different influences?
Soul R&B,
Okay.
Yeah. It sounds modern, but yet like it was made in the 60s,
Nice.
that kind of stuff.
Very nice. Cool.
Yeah, so it's got a real hip vibe to it.
Are you listening to anybody, Tim, right now that you want to mention?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been listening to a lot of, I've been going back and listening to a lot of old records that I used to listen to a lot. I haven't checked out a lot of new things recently. I mean, there's stuff I like. I love the stuff Al was talking about. Like, I've checked stuff out, but people I'm listening to right now, I mean, I don't know. I'm like listening to Bartok right now.
Nice. Cool.
And just Kenny Barron, just piano players, and it's mostly jazz stuff I've been listening to lately.
Yeah.
So, kind of just depends. It depends on the day, I guess.
I hear you. Depends
Well,
on the day,
I mean,
sure.
a lot of that also, Tim, is like you have a subscription to Apple Music, and like back in the day, right? You'd buy a CD, right, and then that CD was in,
Right.
or 6 CDs, and those 6 CDs went in your CD disc changer in your car, and you just crushed those, over and over and over and over again. Yeah. And it's not like that anymore.
Yeah.
Now you're like, I'm in the mood for this, and you put in, I want to listen. I just did the other day. I was painting my sister bought a new old house, and I was helping her paint, and I turned on the Cannonball Adderley, and it was just, like I'm not picking individual songs from individual, but I'm in that mood, Frank Sinatra. I'm making spaghetti sauce. I want to listen to Frank Sinatra, and it's just like this stream of the way you dial up what you're listening to now is so different than it used to be. And then there's times where like, hey man, somebody just talked about Al Jarreau, and I went specifically to go listen to this Al Jarreau album from 1982 with this song called Sticky Wicket. It is some of the funkiest stuff that but I had to go back, and then you'll go back and listen to this specific thing, and then you go down the YouTube rabbit hole, because after that video, it's got these 5, suggested videos. So it's just like, depending on what venue you're in, you listen to music so differently nowadays than we used to.
So it's almost better.
I don't know. Is it better? Is it worse? I don't know. It's what it is, right? That's how it happens now.
It's kind of a double-edged sword. I think there's something to be, because it's funny, even with Apple Music and all that, I still listen to albums. Like
Yeah.
I still do that. Like I got to focus on. But with that said, it's much easier to jump from album to album.
Right.
The thing is it's there's something to be said about having. It's almost too easy. So part of I
How
think
much music do you have access to in this little thing, man? It's
Right.
banana.
yeah, and it's like I think some of that the way people listen to live music. I think it's being affected by the fact that they have way too much easy access to whatever they want. So they don't, and also this whole 1 minute culture that we're in, it's all of those things tie together. It's just like, when we were in, when I was a kid, when we were in college, I saved up money to get a Bill Evans record. And that was the only record I had, or CD at that time,
Right.
until I got a little money together to buy another one. Or maybe I splurged and was able to buy like 3 CDs or something,
Right.
That's what you had to live with,
Yeah, it felt cool. Like, oh, this one has 2 CDs in it. This is awesome.
Right. Oh, and just the act of opening it up and reading the liner notes and
Yeah.
that whole physical, visceral
nobody
thing.
reads liner notes anymore, right? Like that's a negative. You don't get you don't get a chance.
No, you don't know who worked on it. You don't know who the special musicians are on it. You just
They make you
it's
work.
this
You got to
person's
work
album.
for that. You got to work for that information.
Thankfully,
Right, exactly. I know they're trying to get that mega data back into it, but I think it's going to take a while to get it in there. I know, like Tidal, a streaming service, they have the credits, which is nice.
Tidal's really great because that's also Tidal is basically it's like lossless Apple Music, basically, right?
Yeah, right. And that's the one I use. I have Apple and I have Tidal because I want to know who's playing on the albums, and I have Apple because before Apple became streaming, I had so many albums uploaded onto there, so I'm not going to get rid of that.
Right, exactly.
Well, guys, we are at the end of the podcast. Any last words any of you would like to leave before we play you out?
I'll leave you with this one thought.
Okay.
I'm hopeful that this pandemic has hopefully grown. We might not realize this just yet, but I'm hopefully it has grown people's appreciation for live music. I don't know about you, but I'm kind of sick and tired of live streams. It was cool in the beginning, and we'll call it a Band-Aid, but it's not the same.
live.
It's not the same. And I want to go obviously play live music, but I also want to go see it. And
Yep.
so I'm
yeah,
hopeful that,
amen.
that this has, you had asked about the current local live music scene. I'm hoping this is a shot in the arm for it.
I hope so too.
Did you guys hear what happened in New York State? They just passed a law banning any establishment charging a cover.
Okay, so they have to pay the band, or the band plays for free, or
The establishment can't charge a cover to patrons coming into the establishment. So if a restaurant's having music, the music must be treated as incidental music. And I think this applies to venues.
How could that apply to a venue?
It's a coronavirus measure.
Oh, okay. I know what you. Yeah. I think that's temporary.
that's got to be temporary.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of fears that it's not.
There's no way. There's no way that could not be temporary.
There's 12 music venues in New York that have sued the state of New York because there's wording in the bill that says that this could continue after the pandemic.
Gentlemen, this was phenomenal. Very informative. So thanks, Tim. Thanks, Al.
Thank you very much for those kind words.
Thanks, man.
We'll talk again soon. Well, there you have it. There is Wisconsin's own Phat Phunktion. I'd like to thank Nate Wyckoff of Frequency Farm Recording in Wisconsin for writing the podcast music.
Dean Bundy for the podcast voiceover intro.
And to our sponsor, ZTF Studio. ZTF Studio has been around for about 20 years. First as Concrete Dog Bicycle in Kenosha as a live room recording studio, and now ZTF Studio is a professional mixing studio for musicians that are actively putting together their next album or song releases. ZTF Studio offers a free trial mix, no strings attached. So contact Zach at ztfstudio.com. Phat Phunktion is going to play us out. So here's their song Well Run Dry off their latest release, Real Life High Fidelity. Have a great week, and I'll see you again on Monday.